version of it, which has been. Yeah.
So I have a story about that. My father is a doctor. He's a vascular surgeon. He's 80 now. He's still practicing. And he kind of struggles to understand what I'm doing with my life. So I was trying to explain to him this concept of the vital force or the healing energy, and Dad really thought about it. And then he said, you know, I could have two different 75-year-old ladies with a diabetic ulcer. And let's say that one woman is a widow. Her kids live far away. She doesn't belong to a church or other social group. She's very isolated, doesn't really have any activity. She's pretty depressed. I can take another 75-year-old woman with the exact same size of diabetic ulcer, whose family is around her, very involved in her church or other social activities. She may be quilting or gardening. Her life is very full. He said, the first woman will not get better and the second one will. And I said, Dad, you understand what I'm talking about. I said, did they teach you that in medical school? He said, no, but every doctor who's been in practice as long as I have has seen this, and we know it. And I said, do you have a word for what you just described to me? He said, no, but we know that it's there. I said, that's what the healing energy or the vital force is.
That's a great
description.
Well, Chris, in the United States, they have to go and do studies. So I read a study, I don't know, a couple of years ago that was about men live longer that have wives and dogs. I mean, it was a pretty straightforward study.
There's a joke in there, I'm sure.
We don't even want to ask which was the determining factor there.
But it was like the significant, I mean, they had like 7 to 10 year extension of their lifespan if their wives were still alive and or they had dogs. So that whole companionship element of balance.
So
you reminded me of a really interesting point, and that is this thing about studies, you know, because so people say, well, has there been much research done on homeopathy? And there has. But one of the things that's really important is, like, if someone has what we call chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so what used to be called emphysema when we were kids, so we would say, well, they have a kind of COPD. Right. Or if someone has hay fever, well, they have a kind of hay fever. Even if they have diarrhea, they have a kind of diarrhea. And we're interested in that full expression, you know, the constellation of those symptoms that makes one person's condition with the same diagnosis different from another. And so there could be 10 people who have the same, we call it allopathic, Western medicine diagnosis, who would get 10 different remedies because we would be matching that entire person.
All their other patterns of their lives.
Exactly. You'd be matching that to the remedy. So when you try to do a study, it's more difficult to do. You can't say, well, you either give arnica or nothing, or give arnica and a placebo, for example. And actually, arnica would probably be one where it works a little better than some others. But if you took something like diarrhea, there would be, there is a study that was done with children. There's a wider range of remedies that are used. And so the whole practice of homeopathy is more individualized in a way that doesn't lend itself so beautifully to the kind of studies, the research studies that are typically done in medicine.
Okay, so we have to learn what these things are.
Okay.
Okay, so
the consumer. Go to the health food store. Let's say this little blue tube here would be the most likely thing that they would find. Most health food stores and a lot of pharmacies at this point have this little blue tube.
This little blue tube, and this is Coffea cruda.
It has a Latin name, and then often it has one word, like the name of one condition under it. And I might send a patient into the health food store to buy something for hot flashes, and she'll come back and she'll say, but this says it's for constipation, because they only can fit like one thing out of the hundreds of things that could work
This says
for.
sleeplessness with mental hyperactivity. Okay, so I'm restless at night and I can't go to bed, and this is supposed to help me.
Yeah, and actually there's one more thing about Coffea. It's sleeplessness from happy anticipation. So like somebody who's getting married the next day who can't sleep because she's so excited and she's thinking, you know, she's wide awake. So it's actually almost from good stress to the person to be
So if I have to make a presentation at work tomorrow that determines how much my bonus is at the end of the year, this might not be, it might be.
Well, if you know you're going to really ace it and you know you're going to get that bonus, then that probably would be a good remedy for you. So we'd have many, many remedies for insomnia.
Right.
So, yeah, so in the health food store, it may be a little tricky to match the exact correct remedy. They might need a book. They're like health food stores typically have a book on homeopathy. But the point is you want to see what they actually are. The carrier substance is a little tiny sugar pill. It's like sucrose or lactose.
I don't even think we can show this on the TV, how small
Yeah.
they are. We can take one out.
These are the largest kind that you can get, and they're the size of a very small pea. And the tiny ones are like the size of a grain of sand. And it doesn't
These are
really
the
matter.
largest ones you can get, huh?
Yeah, the tiny ones are like,
Wow.
It's
like
not
grain of sand
very
size.
big.
so part of the safety of homeopathy is that there's no actual starting substance in there. It's been diluted so many times. So you could get something like a very common remedy is arsenicum, which is made from arsenic. It's a poison, but there's no molecules of arsenic left in there. So the
Well,
obvious
this
question
where
is,
it
how
gets
can it work?
weird.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
gets weird.
yeah.
Okay, so the answer is that the little pellet contains information in the same way that you could have a number of different computer chips. They're tiny and they contain an enormous amount of information. And if you were to do a chemical analysis, they're all chemically identical, but they contain different information. This is not substance-based medicine. This is information-based medicine. It's energy-based and information-based. The energy comes from what we call succussions, part of the process of making it. Things get succussed or whacked. But you're putting kinetic energy is being added into the system with every succussion. So these little things actually contain a lot of energy, and people often feel that energy when they take it. They feel energized. It's a very common thing people report.
Right. And you
And
assume
then-
it's because it's in a sugar pill. I mean, that's...
But it's such a tiny amount.
Such a
And
tiny amount.
if people, I should just say, some people who are, say, lactose intolerant or they don't want sugar, you could take that tiny pellet and dissolve it into a half a cup of water and take a teaspoon, and the amount of sugar would be really, really inconsequential. Not enough to cause any kind of hyperactivity for a child or anything like that.
right.
But these little pellets contain information. And here's another analogy that might make sense. Think about snowflakes and think about, chemically, they're all H2O. They're just simple water molecules. But there are millions and millions of different patterns of snowflakes. And if you imagine that each pattern contained information about, here's how we're going to heal your diarrhea, or here's how we're going to heal your constipation, or here's how we're going to heal your hot flashes, or whatever, they all contain all this information. So all of that is stored in these tiny little sugar pellets that people can get from the health food store. Yeah.
I know it sounds unbelievable. One of the things that we talk about at school is like, so what are ways to understand it? I think that, you know, the chi that you were talking about, that vitality, it really knows what's healthy. I mean, it knows how your spine is to be aligned. It knows what health is. It knows how to grow fingernails. It knows how to be hungry. It knows how to digest. And sometimes we get into funny habits, maybe because of fear or anxiety or whatever, or a bad experience, like even a physical trauma, and we start to hold, let's say you start to hold your shoulder the wrong way just because it hurt for a while and that made it stop hurting and you got used to that. And the remedy would be like a mirror to your vital force, and it would like show your vital force that your shoulder is way up there, and your vital force would be like, well, that's not normal. And there's a way that I think that the remedy reflects, it can show a kind of imbalance. So the vital force gets the message. It's like, oh, that's not health. This is health. And it comes back into alignment. So the thing is that these remedies are balancers. You know, homeopathy is a balancing modality. And that's one of the things that makes it so safe.
Maybe I could add something to that. This is a really simple example of what you were saying about how the body knows, it has its healing wisdom, it knows what it wants, and the remedies help it to find balance. I'm going to mention a couple of remedies people could easily get in a health food store. One of them is called Calcarea phosphorica. We'll abbreviate it CalcPhos, CalcPhos. Okay. They could get it in a 6X, which is a tissue salt potency. And
You need to adjust your necklace.
Just keep talking. We'll do it
Okay.
in a
Microphone,
moment.
sorry.
We'll do
Okay.
it in a moment.
okay, anyway, so this is something that will, if somebody has osteoporosis, it teaches the body how to take calcium and deposit it in the bones. There's a companion one called CalcFluor, Fluor, which teaches the body how to dissolve calcium like in a heel spur, a bone spur, where it's not supposed to be. Here's the question. How does the body know? Why doesn't the CalcFluor dissolve bones? Why doesn't the CalcPhos create bone spurs? The answer is because there is an energetic template that guides the body in laying down the calcium where it's supposed to be. The body knows where bone is supposed to be, where it's not supposed to be. one of the ways we know this, there's a wonderful book called Vibrational Medicine.